Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating, multi-layered discussion that recently unfolded among a panel of political and economic commentators. We're going to trace the invisible lines they draw, connecting high-level global finance all the way down to the empty seats on your local school board. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with part 1, 2 opposing political systems. Then, 2, debating Trump's true allegiance. 3, the impact on Main Street. And finally, 4, reclaiming power locally. Starting off with Section 1, 2 opposing political systems, the macro-political battle. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the commentators reframe current geopolitics. They don't look at it as a simple left versus right issue. Instead, they see a massive clash between two totally distinct paradigms. On one hand, you have the globalist system, a deeply entrenched network obsessed with centralized financial infrastructure and institutional control. Pushing back against that is the sovereigntist system, which they define as a movement laser-focused on independent nations, decentralizing power, and actually returning agency to individual citizens rather than massive international institutions. The speakers trace the roots of this globalist system back over 300 years, linking it directly to historic London banking and modern institutional finance. They argue the system survives by curating information and controlling financial levers across borders. On the flip side, the sovereigntist system is described as an emerging force, actively trying to dismantle that imperialistic financial control to empower independent states. Now, it's important to remember that this is the commentators' specific framing. They basically view every major conflict through this lens of a massive financial and political clash. Moving right along to Section 2, debating Trump's true allegiance, skepticism versus pragmatism. So within this grand macro framework, the panel zeroes in on Donald Trump. But here's the catch. They completely passionately disagree on his actual role. The skeptic view, voiced by a commentator named Steve, points out that despite all the anti-globalist rhetoric out there, figures like Trump are still intimately tied to financial giants. We're talking BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. To Steve, if you're sharing a room with these institutional powers, you are part of their system. The big fear here is that citizens might just end up with the exact same centralized control, just wrapped in a different, friendlier-looking package. But then we get Ace's perspective, acting as the pragmatist. And this brilliantly illustrates the other side of the coin. Ace argues that, well, you simply can't blow up the global financial world overnight. To really change the system, a leader has to go to these trillion-dollar institutions and use the leverage of the existing system to safely transition into a new one. It's about offering them a choice to get on board rather than trying to start from absolute scratch. So we're left with two totally different interpretations. The skeptic demands immediate transparency, right? If you're shaking hands with global banks, you're compromised. Period. But the pragmatist asks for patience, specifically a 2 to 4 year grace period to unwind decades of ingrained policy. It really boils down to whether you view a handshake with these elites as a total surrender or a strategic threat. The skeptic worries about hidden allegiances, while the pragmatist believes those allegiances are just temporary tools used to achieve a long-term sovereign goal. That brings us to Section 3, the impact on Main Street, grounding the abstract. Now, high-level debates about global finance are definitely fascinating, but the commentators make an abrupt, really important pivot here. They ask, what does any of this actually mean for us? To connect these worlds, they introduce the concept of fractals, patterns that repeat at every single scale. They argue that the exact same power dynamics playing out between massive global factions are happening right now in your local school board meetings. Or, hey, even during a brutal dispute over who brings the potato salad to the family picnic. The micro reflects the macro. If you want to understand or change global dynamics, you can literally start by addressing the fractals in your own backyard. Because out there on Main Street, people are genuinely hurting. The commentators totally agree that despite whatever positive economic indicators get thrown around in the media, tangible economic pressures are absolutely crushing everyday citizens. We're talking about the undeniable reality of skyrocketing healthcare costs, the daily sting of $4 a gallon fuel prices, the sheer impossibility of navigating modern housing and mortgages, and of course, the paralyzing weight of student debt. These are the day-to-day realities that abstract political theories usually fail to fix. So, the crucial point is this. High-level political maneuvering, institutional realignments, and strong GDP numbers mean absolutely nothing if everyday citizens are still getting crushed. The speakers share a profound, very real frustration that the current system seems entirely built for institutions, not people. And honestly, it's this shared frustration that leads them directly to their ultimate conclusion. Which leads perfectly into Section 4, Reclaiming Power Locally, the Grassroots Blueprint. Realizing that no top-down savior is coming to magically fix housing or healthcare, the commentators lay out a literal blueprint for everyday people. And it all starts with a staggering, almost unbelievable statistic: 70%. According to their data, roughly 70% of all local political races in this country are completely uncontested. Let that sink in. That means the vast majority of seats deciding your local taxes, your school policies, your community zoning, they feature only one single candidate. Power is quite literally sitting on the table, just waiting to be taken by anyone willing to show up. The speakers then build on this with another big number: 3,144. That is the total number of counties in America. Keeping that 70% uncontested rate in mind, they lay out a brilliant mathematical solution that completely bypasses the need for billions of dollars or massive national influence. Here is the math they present, and it's pretty wild. If you find just 10 regular, civic-minded people in each of those 3,144 counties to step up, you only need 31,444 people nationwide. To put that into perspective, that is just 1 in 8,000 adults. By activating just a tiny fraction of the population, people who don't even want power but simply want to fix their communities, the entire balance of local political power could be flipped virtually overnight. Let's move to and see how this builds. So what is the actual actionable step here? Well, the commentators highlight a specific tool mentioned in their discussion: jointtab.us. You literally just go to the site, enter your zip code, and instantly see a list of vacant, uncontested local seats, everything from mayor to state legislature. You don't need to be some seasoned, power-hungry politician. You just need to be willing to step up and serve your community for a few years. This entire explainer takes us on a pretty profound journey. We started way up high, looking at a world dominated by massive, opposing globalist and sovereigntist financial factions, and we ended up right at your own local zip code. The commentators make a compelling case that the macro is entirely depending on the micro, so it leaves us with a vital question to consider. Will you spend your energy waiting for top-down salvation from global political figures, or will you step up to shape the fractals of your own community? The empty seat is waiting.